Right, did I do that? Yeah, did do that. Right, let me share my screen, which is this one. Make it big. Right, here we go. So, this is primarily aimed at anyone who is looking at building your own macros with confidence. And ideally, this is what we want everybody to do. And the reason for this is because I can design meal plans all day long until I'm blue in the face, and I've got no issues doing that. But ultimately, that means you entirely rely on me forevermore. And what we actually want is for every single woman in this program to have the confidence to at least give this a go and to try and start playing. And that's what long-term success in terms of your nutrition, that is what it's always going to look like. But before we do, quite a few shout outs this evening. I actually think loads of the new women, by the way, absolutely crushing it. And I do think there is a bit of a difference in summer when obviously people are going on and off holidays. You've got school holidays with potentially children off. You've got disruption to the routine. Whereas I can already see the tide turning for a lot of the women who have joined even in September, absolutely fucking crushing it. So we've got Carolyn, who was, I don't know if you all remember, and she shared it in the group chat where she was sat outside of the gym in tears, terrified to go in. She's now absolutely smashing it and no issues whatsoever walking into that gym, crushing a workout and leaving. And that happened in a really short amount of time, which is incredible. We've got Fran, award-winning Fran in her business, absolutely smashing every single angle of this. Had to pivot a little bit so she could do some home workouts alongside the gym. Again, that's the whole point. We can adapt it to your lifestyle rather than anybody struggling with not being able to achieve things. Sorry, I've got Caroline and Carolyn. I meant Carolyn, the first one. So she's really getting to grips with it now. So like the first week, when everyone's trying to figure it out and trying to get the macros, you're trying to get your workout routine, all of this, but absolutely smashing it. Caroline was the one smashing it in the gym. Karen, absolutely crushing it. Again, kind of teething because she does a lot of swimming. So it was a bit like, is this macros? Is it going to be okay? Are we going to figure this out? Absolutely smashing it. And then we've also got Louise who's crushing it as well. So I really feel like all of the new ladies seem to be coming together, seem to be making like real strides forward. And Louise again navigating a whole new routine, having a conversation with her partner as well around the cooking and trying to navigate that when your partner, like, so her partner does the cooking of an evening. And one of the concerns was, well, I can't eat those portion sizes. I can't do it in the same way. So we talked about how to almost, it sounds bad, but manipulate him into thinking it's his idea to actually work around it and see how we could do that. So again, absolutely crushed it. Every single one of these women, super legends. And I know you're all going to go on to achieve great things. So welcome to your mega fucking start because really proud of all of you. Becky smashed 2.2 stone down. So everyone's goals, by the way, are completely different. How much body fat some person's got to lose versus another. But she has now officially entered her reverse diet phase, which is always a really exciting, terrifying phase for you guys, but very exciting for us when you actually get to eat more and keep off the body fat. Jane smashed 24 pounds down, also come up against some challenges in kind of the last month, different things going on, but she has not given up. And that is key. There are going to be highs, there are going to be lows, and we're here to coach you through every single part of them. Michelle, 2.3 stone down. There were loads, by the way. There were so many wins across the board. And the other thing I wanted to point out this week is we see all of the PBs. Every single gym PB is another massive tick in a box. It's another massive, massive achievement. So well done to every single one of you guys for pushing, for really genuinely trying to build that muscle without fear and just giving it everything you've got. So well done to every single one of you. But what I want to do tonight, like I say, you've all got your macro set. But the real power is knowing how to break them down into meals that you enjoy, that fuel you at the relevant points in the day and can keep you on track. Longer term, like I say, we want you to be able to do this with confidence so that actually you can work it in around your lifestyle, because we never want this to feel like a dictatorship that you must have this. It's about working out your schedule, your life, and what's actually going to work in and around you. So what I'm basing a lot of this on, so I'm doing examples with 1400, 1600, and 1800. That's, I would say, generally speaking, a lot of you guys are within that. We do have some women on higher calories, not really much lower than 1400. I'm always a little bit funny about taking them too much lower than this. I'd rather increase the energy output than go too much lower with the calories. That being said, again, it completely depends on the person. So as you can see, there's not actually that much difference between what a typical macro split would look like. There are variations within this, like I put at the bottom, perimenopause, PCOS. There are some slight exceptions where these might tweak a little bit. But again, you can kind of see 120 to 130 grams of protein is going to be box ticking for 99% of women in this program. Carbs between that 110 to 150, fats 45 to 60. There's not actually as wide a variation between the calories as you might actually think there are. But we do have some non-negotiables. So trying to get protein in at every meal, so somewhere between 20 and 40 grams is going to serve you. So if you can start to think breakfast, lunch, dinner, what is my protein source? Where is it coming from? Plus a couple of snacks here and there, you are going to be on a really good trajectory by doing that. We need that protein in as women. We know our bone density is decreasing. We cannot do anything against that except for trying to build the muscle piece. So that is what it's doing, especially if you are in a caloric deficit. Your muscle mass can start decreasing, which is why things like the fat jabs, if people are not training correctly, they are doing a lot of long-term damage potentially to their physique. So we have to keep that protein high, stabilizing your blood sugar, reducing the cravings. Protein also synthesizes the fastest out of all of the macros. So you've got your protein, your fats, and your carbs. They're your three macronutrients. Protein actually breaks down. That's what I mean by synthesizing. It does that faster than the other two food groups. So again, if you've got protein within every meal, it's going to help you digest that food quicker than if you don't have protein within that meal. So fun fact for you all there. Fiber daily, fruit, veg, whole grains, beans, seeds. There are a myriad of different ways that you can get that fiber into your body, but trying to get 20 to 30 grams a day, really easy way of knowing that, 5 portions every single day. So that can be your fruit, your veg, your whole grain, whatever that needs to be made up of. But 5 portions ideally is going to set a really good standard. Massive advisory here is to plan around your natural energy peaks and dips throughout the day. So that's where trying to break these calories down into your routine, and why we don't want to be a dictatorship, because it's about finding exactly what works within your rhythm. And it can take a couple of weeks for us to kind of get into that rhythm, but that's what we really want to be finding. So some of you guys might prefer a bigger breakfast. Some of you guys, for instance, Vicky is Spanish. She's used to actually having a bigger lunch. That's more of a cultural thing that is her preference. Me personally, I prefer to have a slightly bigger dinner. That just kind of sees me through to the end of the day. But what you want to do is think about the routine that is actually going to work with your lifestyle and what's going to keep you feeling fuller for longer, keep you feeling fueled in the right points in the day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, absolutely non-negotiables. You are going to slide and you are going to see that your results do not move in the way that you want them to if you are skipping meals. And if you need those extra snacks in between just to tide you over, then that's a really positive thing as well. So what I want to show you is, and ignore the fact that it doesn't actually go left to right like clockwise like I wanted it to, but I am not a pie chart expert. But I wanted to show you what I feel like is an ideal way to try and think. So when we give you, obviously you've got your calories and you're thinking, right, okay, so let's say your target is 1400 calories a day and you're feeling overwhelmed, going, how the hell do I break this down? Like, where do I even begin? I think this is fairly optimal for most of the women inside of this program. So a slightly lighter breakfast, but still a reasonable chunk of your calories throughout the day. Lunch is then a little bit bigger, and this goes through for all of the same. I would say you just get a little bit more if you've got a bit more calories. Dinner is then slightly larger again. And then you've all got room for snacks within that level. So if we take the 1400 calories, and you can see it on the pie chart as well. So in the pink, you've got 320 calories for breakfast. Lunch, you've got a slightly bigger quadrant. So you've got 400 calories for lunch. Dinner, a little bit larger again, 480. And then you've also got that couple of hundred calories for snacks. Obviously, if your calories are slightly higher, you're just going to get a slightly larger piece. But again, there's not a huge amount in it. And every single one of you can design your breakfast, lunch, and your dinners in that kind of way. So if you start to break it down, and think, what does this look like by meal? That's definitely how I would be breaking it down in my head, going, right, these are my calories. I definitely want three decent meals in my day. So where is it going to be best placed? And some of you, like I say, you might pivot this. You might do more at breakfast, less at dinner. You might do more at lunch. You might have a completely even split pretty much across the day. It's about figuring out where do you need the most energy to be able to stay on track for your lifestyle, for your work commitments, for your way of actually burning the energy that you do throughout the day. So I kind of put together a bit of an again, like meal timings ideal. Now, assuming every single one of you, unless you're waking up and eating in the night, and if you are, please have a conversation with me because I would want to know about that. You're going to be fasting for, and I've actually put 8 hours for sleep. That is your sleep window. So every single one of us does actually organically fast. You just don't actively think you're fasting, but we are because we're not eating. Now, in actual truth, this will be a longer window because in an ideal world, I definitely advocate for the fact that your last meal of the day should be around 2.5 to 3 hours before you go to sleep. So you're also increasing that fasting window organically there. And unless you wake up and literally, some of you might do this, you might go straight downstairs for food, but most of you will have another little bit of a window before you actually go for your breakfast. Like it's not literally, I don't wake up my eyeballs, my alarm goes off, and I'm straight in the fridge making food. That's not the way it happens. But assuming, so I am working back from bedtime, by the way. So I'm working back from the night before because, again, that's thinking, right, when am I going to get my sleep in? Which is vital for all things health and fitness. If you're not getting decent sleep, it's likely to throw out the next day and what actively happens. So I am running currently off about 5 hours sleep. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. It's pretty tragic over here right now, but that's fine. It's one day. I'm well aware of why. Obviously, traveling, and I think we were traveling for about 15 hours yesterday, so didn't get a huge amount of sleep in that time. I'm running in my body clock 3 hours ahead of you guys, but it is what it is. And I have managed to stick very well to food today. So what I haven't done, but my choice was not to expend too much energy. I nearly contemplated going to the gym today and I thought, you know what? I'm not well rested. If I do that, one, I'm going to be absolutely wiped out and exhausted for this Zoom, which I did not want to do. And two, I knew it would spike my ability to want to eat differently because then I would be over exerting myself. And then it's naturally going to cause that feeling of going, right, now I need to eat everything in sight. And I just don't want to do that. I've eaten enough, trust me. I kind of want to feel like I'm putting good nutrients into my body and making smarter choices today. But let's assume you're waking up around 6 a.m. Might be slightly later, might be slightly earlier, depending on you, your routine, what you've got to get done before you get to work. 6:10. This is where if you are getting on, again, give or take, it might be a little bit later, but if you are a morning worker-outerer, I am personally, you're probably going to be getting ready pretty quickly and trying to get out of the door and I'd get to the gym first thing, or you're going to be going to wherever you work out in your house. But that's going to be a fairly quick window. Now, if you are training early in the morning, we need fast digesting carbs because we need something available in our stomach to one, fuel your gym session, but two, we want to bring our cortisol levels down. So when we wake up, our cortisol is organically quite high, which is your stress hormone, which holds on to body fat. We want to be able to drop that down quite quickly. So this is where having something in our body and not training fasted. Now, if you're a bodybuilder, this advice would be completely different. I do not coach women on bodybuilding. Bodybuilders, when they're in the highest point, so one of my good friends, who's also one of our cheerleaders, she's a bodybuilder. And in her first season last year, right leading up to her show, she was on 600 calories a day. She cannot afford any single ounce of food before she woke up to do her training. She had to do it fasted. Now, they are already high cortisol levels. She's already in that high bracket. And that's a lifestyle to step on stage being dry, being lean, having literally no body fat on their physique. And obviously, they know they're pushing their hormones, they know, but that's what they're doing. We're not doing that inside of this program. And if that's what you want, absolutely fine. I'm just not the right coach for you. So we don't need to do that. All of you guys do have an allowance of calories where you would still be able to get something into your system, but it has to be fast digesting carbs, a banana, rice cakes, Rice Krispie squares, just something in that kind of low, quick digesting carbs category. Then you're going to hit your training session, you're going to get it out of the way, you're going to get back. And again, that's when you want to be having your breakfast. So quite soon after your training, roughly when your heartbeat returns back to normal, you can start to feel it when you go, right, okay, my hunger levels are picking up again. This is kind of your breakfast point. So 320 to 400 calories, depending on where you're sitting within that 1400 to 1800 calorie bracket. Now, 10:30 a.m. Now, I have put this in italics because this might depend on how many calories you've got and when you train. Because if you're having your pre-workout, you might not get this, or you might have to compromise on your afternoon snack or a little bit less somewhere in the day. But you could have a 10:30 a.m. snack. Now, I typically actually don't do this one. I usually can make it through from breakfast right through to lunch. And it probably is because I've already had some carbs before my training session. So again, it's kind of, I find it balances itself out okay. But for you, you might sit in an office and that might be your point in the day where you really feel like you need something. For me, it's middle of the afternoon, but it might be breakfast time for you in that kind of that mid-morning window. Have it. If that's when your body wants it, have it. Lunch, I tend to try for a bit of a later lunch again, just to see me through. When I'm in a calorie deficit, I'm just trying to make it through that window. So I will have probably even later than 1 p.m. But again, that 400 to 500 calorie marker, 4 p.m., that is my snack time. You're not taking that away from me. I don't care who anybody is. I need a snack at about 4 p.m. That is my largest dip of the day. Some of you guys, again, you might be coffee drinkers. I am not one of you. And that might be enough to pick you up and just see you through. But for me, I am going to be consuming usually one of the high protein yogurts of some kind. That's usually my snack of choice. Dinner, 480 to 500 calories. So again, it's a decent portion of food that you can all make work within your macros. If you are evening training or potentially having a rest day as well, you might switch things up. You're obviously not going to have that pre-workout snack. So you're going to have breakfast when you have it. Everything else is pretty much the same. But again, you will need to think about either slow digesting carbs within your lunch. Now, if you are training about 6 p.m., you probably want them around 4 hours before so that energy is readily available. Or you take a similar principle where you get some fast digesting carbs, low calories, below 100, time that within about an hour of your training session maximum. So ideally, I'd probably actually say about a 30-minute window. So you could pivot that snack and do it slightly differently. Dinner, you might, again, if you're an evening worker outerer, this is where your dinner might be slightly later. And you've just got to try and time those windows to get them optimized for your hunger levels and when you can make it work. Also, things like taking into consideration if you eat as a family, that might be something where you're going, right, okay, well, my children eat at a certain time. I still want to have family meals. So you've got to then time that in around your family choices. So this is where it very much starts to break down your lifestyle and going, right, when is the optimal time for me? Not when is the optimal time for Jenny inside of the program. Start to think about your personal routine, and it is flexible around you. There's no one size fits all. So in terms of protein, so option A as a consideration, so 25 to 35 grams of breakfast, 30 to 35 grams because lunch is a slightly bigger portion of calories, so we want slightly more. Dinner, 35 to 40. So my dinner is usually actually exceptionally high in protein. I will still have all the others at the rest of the day, but dinner for me is usually extremely high in protein. And then again, that snack or split in two, depend on how you're doing it, 20 to 25 grams. Option B, potentially four smaller meals with two snacks. So again, very, very similar, but because you're splitting it into four meals, you might just have slightly less protein, but packed into different meals throughout the day. So in terms of, so these are just some like quick options that you can use for a bit of inspiration. So we've got the granola, the Greek yogurt bowl, some berries in there. Again, we're getting that fiber in, 25 grams of protein. Do you know what I mean? You're getting that in. Chicken wrap, loads of veggies or salad, that kind of thing, maybe with a little bit of dabble of hummus on the side. Snack could be a protein shake, an apple, could be something like carrot sticks, or one of, like I say, the protein yogurts, great, great options. You could have edamame beans. Do you know what I mean? You can get quite creative with this. Dinner, salmon, roast potatoes, greens. You're probably going to struggle to get too much more lean than that kind of meal. But that's definitely one of my favorites. You will always find me in my weekly shop pretty much having salmon, air fried roast potatoes, and I personally mixed vegetables, frozen mixed veg, very easy to make, quick air fry meal. 1600 calories. So this is where you would get a little bit more oats, but you can easily have oats in the last option as well. This is pretty much my breakfast of choice. I might have a banana, might have berries, but I'm just literally blitzing that in a blender, chugging it back, and away I go. You'll have heard me say so many times before, not a massive breakfast lover. I just know it serves me. I get it in, I get it done. In about 5 minutes flat, that breakfast is gone. Snack, two boiled eggs, carrot sticks, really easy again. Keep them in the shells and they will stay fresh so you can batch cook your boiled eggs. Lunch, turkey mince chili. You all know I'm a big chili lover. Loads of vegetables in that chili with a portion of rice on the side. You could have a protein bar, coffee if you've got slightly higher calories. You might be able to afford that protein bar. Dinner, cod, quinoa, mixed veg, a little bit of olive oil drizzle, like really, really basic, simple style foods. Again, 1800 calories. It's all very similar things, and all of these meals you would be able to have across the board. Cottage cheese in this one, phenomenal for high protein if you like it. I know it's a little bit like Marmite, isn't it? Cottage cheese. I personally really like it. That's an option that you can have. Again, you can make it sweeter with fruit, or you can make it more savory with something like carrot sticks or celery sticks. Things like celery, Really, really good. It's actually one of the 0 calories. It won't come up as 0 calories, but it actually is because it actually requires more energy to break celery down than it does to actually eat it. So a little bit of a hack for you there as well. And then dinner, steak, sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes, phenomenal carbohydrate choice, broccoli, olive oil. Easy. This is where you need to pay attention to things like your condiments, because if you were to add something in like peppercorn sauce, you fucks it. You're suddenly going to be like 400 calories way over. So this is where you've really got to think about, okay, what else am I having within this food that I can actually afford to have as a part of my macros plan? Not that there's anything wrong with the peppercorn sauce. I love the stuff, but it is quite high in calories. So every single one of you, you will not pass my onboarding without having been sent this graphic. So this healthy food plate, there isn't a single person in the entire time that I have been coaching that hasn't been sent this. And you could even scroll right back through to the very point that I onboarded you. Every single one of you will have been sent this graphic, and it is so important. This is actually a government produced graphic, by the way. That's where it comes from the government website, and it does still stand as something that we should be doing. But think in building blocks. So think in, and I would say two kind of building blocks, like meal building blocks in terms of breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. They're your building blocks of that. Then you've got your timing building blocks of going, right, what times of the day are going to be the most suitable for me personally, and how I need to get my energy in and my lifestyle factors. And then you've got the building blocks of what actually goes onto your plate. So always selecting your protein first is going to serve you for the rest of your life. So thinking, I'm not going to build out a meal for the rest of my life unless I'm considering what protein source I am having in every single one of those meals. That will genuinely serve you forever. Then your carbohydrate source, which might go up and down a little bit depending on how many calories you want to play with throughout the day. Veggies, fruit, salad, whatever you want to make up the side of that plate with, that's what should be predominantly taken over. Breakfast can be a little bit different. Not likely to necessarily get veggies in at breakfast, but easily you might be able to get fruit in. And fat at every meal. Fat, things like healthy oils, olive oil, just a little bit of fat going in. Some foods are higher in fat, things like salmon. Organically, it's just a little bit of an oilier fish. So you're going to be getting your healthy fats in sometimes without even realizing that you're doing it. Batch cooking your protein, another little bit of a life hack. So, no matter what you're having, create it in a batch, and it might well be that you can easily just pull it out of the fridge or freezer. I do tend to cook on the go. Like I say, aside from breakfast, I make it very, very quickly. But everything else, like the protein skewers that you get from Aldi, they're just available in the freezer and I can just chuck them in the air fryer. But you can pre-cook any of that food. Use volume food, so courgette, salad, berries, anything that is a vegetable is exceptionally low in calories. Now, you might want to consider your vegetables in terms of flatulence and how gassy you are as a human, which can also be quite a funny thing that people notice when they're new in. So consider that the greener the vegetable, the more likely to be a little bit gassy, but just worth noting. And have your go-to snacks. Have things that you know, this is my, I don't vary my snacks that much. I'm quite a boring basic bitch. So I know roughly what my snacks are. Now, some of your snacks might be a cube of dark chocolate. It might be, I don't know, something sweet, something fun, something completely unprotein related. And if you're hitting your protein elsewhere, you can enjoy your fucking snacks. Do you know what I mean? If you want to have something else, have it. Just consider, am I getting my protein in across the day? And therefore, I don't need to consider it with this snack. That can be absolutely fine as well. So, does anybody have any questions about anything that we have just spoken about? So, I wanted to eat the whole fridge the other Monday when I did too much. This is it. A good training session can definitely do that too. And I used to, so when I first started lifting, what did I used to have? I think it was a banana. And then as like the time went on, I would have a banana before I got, and obviously by that point, I'd built a lot more muscle mass and I hadn't really considered, and I was getting in the gym. I don't know, a few heavy sets of squats, and I was ravenous. And I was like, this is wild. Like that banana is gone in my system within 10 minutes of me training. So then I had to introduce something that was going to be a little bit higher. So sometimes that can play a part. Obviously, the more muscle you build, the more fuel you're going to burn long term, which is why we do the muscle building piece, because it's going to give you more food freedom in the long run. Yeah, Pip, you know, salmon and veg. It's like the OG for us. That was your dinner tonight. I'm assuming it was the salmon and veg as well, but it could have been one of the other things. But has anyone got any kind of, so Carolyn, so if dinner is really late, say 8:39, should you push breakfast back the next day to maintain a fasting period? So I do think 8:39 is quite late. Now it depends on the time you go to bed. If you go to bed at about 11, I would say you're absolutely fine. But what we want is that digesting window, because basically when we go to sleep, everything slows down. Your digestion, your breathing, your heart rate, everything, your body is going into recovery and it's going into sleep mode. So if you eat, like, let's say 8:39 and you go to bed at 9:30, 10, just as an example, you're really going to be slowing your digestion down after you've just had a big meal, and that's likely to take your body so much longer to process and break down, and it might still be available in the morning. That is one consideration. If you do have a later, slightly a bigger meal, so if you are in the category where you prefer a bigger nighttime meal, then you might well find that you can get away with training fasted the next day, because if you, as long as you've got carbohydrates in your system, you might actually be absolutely fine to train fasted. That's the only exception that I would make to that rule. If you have had a slightly, so let's say you had a pasta dish or something the night before, that might well be available to you, but you will know if it's available to you because you'll either feel starving or you'll feel okay. So, but that's if you literally train first thing in the morning. Um, but I wouldn't necessarily say about pushing breakfast back. Again, you might want to push it back if you're thinking, I'm actually, if my last meal at night is at 8:30 and I'm like, do you know what I mean? And I'm eating breakfast at 6 a.m., you've got a really long day to try and stretch those calories out. That's where it might be a bit of a struggle. So you might find that actually pushing breakfast back a little bit might help you out, because then your window of eating is still a bit shorter. I would definitely say listen to your body. Your body leaves clues. If you're not particularly hungry in the morning, like first thing, you can think, right, okay, I can get away with doing this. But then if you're doing the school run, then you're going straight into the office, and then you're liable to skip breakfast, then I would say it's a hard no. And you do need to get it in first thing if it's going to get forgotten about. But if you're not so hungry and you know it's not going to slip, you might well decide to push it back to 7:30, even 8 o'clock in the morning. That's like, just have a play, see what actually seems to respond well for you. I eat well for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then sometimes not hungry for snacks later on. Is it okay to be under calories? Yeah, I would say that's absolutely fine. You don't need to force it. The consideration here is as long as you are well enough fueled. If you are not well enough fueled and that leads you to snacking, which leads you to binge eating and sliding into old habits, that's when we need to go, right, okay, actually, you're just trying to save calories for the sake of it, and it's actually doing you a disservice. But if you're feeling genuinely, you're satisfied, you're pretty full, and you feel okay about that, then I wouldn't force it. As long as your protein's over 100 grams, I actually wouldn't have too many issues with that. You said about choosing your carbs that are processed slower by our body to keep going. How do I know which carbs are processed faster or slower? That will actually be, that's quite a good training. I could do that next week and go into like faster digesting, slower digesting carbs. So just, I mean, as a quick rule of thumb, things like your carbohydrates, like fruit and vegetables, are fast digesting. So they're really low in calories, although they are carbohydrates, fruit and veg. They are out of your system quite quickly. So they don't release a huge amount of energy over a long period of time. They release a faster spike and then it falls away quite quickly. Whereas something like oats, something like pasta, something like bread, something like what are the other options? What's the other big one? Rice is another big one. They are like complex carbohydrates. So they take a long period of time to break down. And what they do is release really slowly over a period of time when your body is digesting them. So you've got usually one of the clues is if it's a higher calorie carb, it is a complex, slower digesting carb. If it's a low calorie carb, it's going to process really quickly. So that's a really quick way of trying to identify. So something like a banana, like 85 calories, give or take, versus something like overnight oats, which might be 200 calories. Do you know what I mean? You're going to see the difference between the two. But I can definitely do more training on that. Is the weight for frozen veggies same as non-frozen ones for our meals? Is it okay to use frozen potatoes, or is that different from veggies? Potato, it doesn't matter, by the way, if it's frozen or fresh. Just look at the calories on the information and on the packaging. Now, vegetables, you will actually get more nutrients from frozen vegetables because it is frozen at source. So that's, I mean, we're not talking vast amounts that's going to make a huge difference. And I would also say with vegetables, it's down to your preference. There are certain meals where I would always have frozen vegetables, and there are certain meals where I would always have fresh vegetables, and I would never mix the two of those. So if I'm making a chili, I'm chucking in like 8 different fresh vegetables. I would never put frozen veg in a chili. I think that'd be weird as fuck, personally. But if I was making something like my salmon, potatoes, and vegetables, I'm quite happy to put on the frozen vegetables, heat it up in a pan, and away I go. So there's no right or wrong with either of those options. It's just knowing, scanning the packaging for the macro information. Veggies is all putting it in. Obviously, sometimes veggies don't have the scanner, but it's more about learning the information. But vegetables, you're probably going to be fairly safe on either. There's not going to be a huge amount of difference. In terms of frozen potatoes, I don't know if you mean chips or if you mean, I don't really know of like, I don't, can you buy mash frozen? I don't really know. I would never. I don't know if you can. But in terms of like a chip, yeah, so chips are going to be higher in calories than normal new potatoes that you, so I use new potatoes just to chuck in the air fryer, that you will get more bang for your buck with just normal potatoes or a sweet potato over and above chips. Chips are going through a process where they are coated with oils, they are designed to taste better. They obviously do keep the skin on, and you're not choosing the potato. Whereas something like a new potato, it's designed with a really light skin on it. So it is naturally going to be a little bit lower in calories. So you get to choose. But again, learning is a really good exercise here. And there's nothing against chips. I do still have chips inside of my diet. If I'm going to have a low calorie burger, I would most likely have that with chips over and above a potato. But if you haven't got the calorie allowance, or you can make your own chips. So some of the women inside of the program will buy potatoes, chop them up like chips, spray them with a bit of fry light, chuck them in the air fryer. Same with sweet potato fries. Get a sweet potato, chop it up into all your little pieces, spray a little bit of fry light, chuck it in the air fryer, and you've got your own homemade chips, which you can 100% control exactly how many calories you can have, and you are going to get more bang for your buck. So if you've got an air fryer, it takes 2 minutes to chop up some chips, chuck them in, and away you go. So that can definitely be an option as well. But really good questions, Vicky. Really good questions. So, does anybody have any questions? It can be about what I've covered, or it can be anything to do with anything you might be struggling with, need a bit more support on, any form checks, literally anything while you've got me. Otherwise, I'm going to assume you're all grand. And I'm sorry, I know it's Wednesday. This will be the last one that's a little bit jiggery pokery because I know it's so close to check-ins and I do like to try and stretch that gap between when you actually hear from me. Um, yeah, I did have a nice holiday. It was a bit annoying. Obviously, I got sick on the front end and then got shits on the back end. So I kind of feel like my holiday was condensed into about 6 days, which I ended up working a lot for because then I was like, now I need to play catch up. So it didn't quite holiday like we'd intended, but story of my life. But no, we did. I love the UAE. It's always going to hold a special place in my heart. Not the same as Dubai. I definitely love Dubai more than Abu Dhabi, but it's still, yeah, it's still an incredible place to visit and nice to see the sun. Not so nice to return to all the laundry, but here we are. Right, I'm going to assume everybody is amazing. Obviously, any questions, anyone watches back on this training, pop them in the community chat. And we will pretty much see you all then at check-in. So hard deadline, 9 a.m. on Friday, but you've got any time tomorrow, right up to 9 a.m. on Friday to get those check-ins done. Hope you're all smashing it, and I will see you on Friday. Mwah. Love you all. Bye.